So today we're unpacking how elite forecasters think. Have you ever listened to a prediction and thought, that sounds convincing, certain, it must be right. And then 6 months later, it wasn't? That's the problem we're solving today. Because in a chaotic world, confidence is everywhere, but accuracy is not. So markets, elections, AI, recessions, wars, everyone has a forecast, but almost no one has a framework. And so today we're talking about super forecasting and how to think clearly when everyone else is guessing. So Will Young is back and he is a specialist in stock selection, neuroeconomics, and super forecasting. And today we're going to dive into all of these things. So Will, it's so good to have you back.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm pumped. So, man, why are humans so drawn to confident predictions even when they're often wrong?
It's just our nature to have some semblance of the world make sense around us. It's a secure foundation. Like I know what's going on. I learned that information. I feel good. It makes me feel confident. And I think everybody can relate to the weather. And I don't really check the weather except for a few minutes in the morning when I walk the dogs to know if it's raining or not. But they would tell you so many times it's going to snow 5 inches or eight, and they were wrong like 85% of the time. And I would say, why even bother listening? If they're wrong, and now it's gotten a little bit better, but people forever would say that. I mean, and I would just go look out and I was like, there's no snow. You said it was a 92% chance and there's no snow. Now
Yeah,
there's an, and I just never believed it. And people would always be confident talking about their sports team and then they would lose. And I'm like, God, they sounded so convincing. You would have bet your whole house on it. Like those things just, but what I've learned and I studied is that about about 75% of the of the forecast economists make, 75% of them are just dead wrong over and over and over again. Less than 23% or even have some accuracy. So I often, when I have debates, I would say to them, what is your goal? Like, if you're just telling me your forecast and you're wrong by this much, and now you're telling me why you're wrong, I don't care why you're wrong. I wanted to know, how do I take advantage of these forecasts? And if I take advantage of it, do I want to try to be a wide receiver for Tom Brady, or on that team, or do I want to be a wide receiver on a guy who's playing in the Pee Wee leagues?
right.
Like, who should you be playing with? And I'm going to give you a perfect example. Tom Brady was on a podcast last week, and this is the overconfidence that people mistake. Jake Paul was interviewing him. He paid Tom Brady $750,000 to do it. And I could tell Tom didn't want to do it, but he took the money because he's promoting stuff. And this is perfectly on the overconfidence of for Jake Paul's like, oh, I'm going to go out there and I'm going to beat everybody in flag football. And Tom's like, you have a lot of confidence for someone that's never played. He's like, I'm a great athlete. And so to Jake, I'm a great athlete doesn't translate into the skill sets involved in that. Tom's like, well, I won 7 Super Bowls. And Jake's like, but I can jump off a top rope and do a flip. But we're not competing in gymnastics or tumbling. And that's where people make the mistake is they get this massive overconfidence because they're pretty good in one area, very good, but they don't realize that it's a different skill set for being accurate in this. Doing mathematical equations, it's really just adjusting. And for me, this overconfidence is what people they're like, of course, they get caught up in the loud, the bravado, but they don't realize that it's the changing, constant updating of your forecast. Because if you want to be accurate, what is your goal of being accurate? It's to make money, to take advantage of it. If you're a
Mm,
sports bettor, you want an accurate um, gambling forecast. If you're in finance and 100 people tell stocks, and I talked about this with Apple, 38 predictions, 38 of them wrong about the iPhone being successful. So why would I even bother listening to that opinion? if it would have stopped me from investing in Apple. I
Right.
mean, everybody's heard of Apple at this point, right? I
Yeah.
mean, who's they sell they've sold hundreds of billions of iPhones. So the question is, or billions of iPhones, I should say, tens of billions. How can I take advantage of it? So for me, super forecasting is a way to compete, to sharpen my sword. And it's
So what
not
is it?
really
What is it? Can you
so
tell us what it is in practical terms?
in practical terms, it's basically when you achieve a level where you're significantly higher than everybody else. So if there's 10,000 people who make forecast, you have to be in the upper 2%. So it's extremely high. And even if you're not in that 2% and you're in the 5 or 10%, you're still doing incredibly well. So I compete. So when it's things like how many NATO members will spend 2% or more of their GDP on defense in 2025? They will open up a contest where all of these people will put in their percentages, 2%, 2.5%. So you're actually going in and putting what you believe in percentages. And for me, I went in and I knew two things. If if 27 or 28 of the NATO members spend this much, that means defense spending will increase in the Eurozone. So I put money in defense in the Eurozone. And I increased my Eurozone allocation. And I increased my Eurozone banks. So that I made somewhere between 50 to 70% last year in the stock market
Wow.
rather than 18%.
Right.
That is a measurable outcome. Where when
Yeah.
I showed, so clients were like, how did we do so well? Because I'm competing. And if I'm wrong, I still know what others do. I know what others are doing because I can see it. All of this data is available, but it does require a significant amount of time. And that's one thing most people would rather be watching TV, listening to sports, and that's their hobby. This is my
Right.
money-making hobby, let's say. It's more fun for me. It's not a fantasy sport, it's real life money making. So rather than play fantasy sports, I'm playing real moneymaker. And like an example, I don't track Bitcoin, I don't really care about it, but there are points where it gets too frothy or it gets too beaten down. Now, I always joke, and this is true. What's the purpose of Bitcoin? Crime. That's what Bitcoin is for. It's for crime because there's no value. But people trade based on their feelings. So I put in an I thought Bitcoin would get to this price because when certain things occur, it drives the price up. It's a social proof in behavioral. And so I use that for my own personal. Now I don't really trade Bitcoin, but I could buy stocks that rise with Bitcoin. And so I did that. So I was able to buy Coinbase around 210, sell it at 400, and now it's 150. So I can actually use these types of measurements that I study and compete in for actual the benefits of my clients and myself.
Right. So what separates a super forecaster from someone who's simply well informed?
Well, you have a measurable outcome. You have a mathematical score that is
Mm,
calculated versus all the forecasts. So it's a if we were if like let's say you get on you have people who do simulators on planes and they're flying planes. You want people if you were on a plane, I would assume we'd all 98% or above scores. I wouldn't want to get on someone with a 10% score, a 20% score. They probably would fly into a mountain in the simulator. It's you could say, well, all pilots make mistakes. Yes, but I like ones that make 2% errors, not 90% errors. Because you know what I mean? If I was going to cheat off someone's test, I'd like to know, are they an A plus or are they a D minus? So this
right.
is a way to give us a score. Now, you could be, this is in all kinds of fields. I don't do every field. I do the 10-year treasury. As an example, I may buy a house overseas because I like warm weather. And I'm trying to forecast interest rates. And for this is a big deal that people don't realize. You have the 10-year treasury, which is based on market. That's other people lending us money and the US government. So if a lot of people don't lend the US government money, the 10-year treasury goes up because and we have to pay more interest, meaning our credit's not as good. Just like if you have a lower credit score, you pay a higher interest rate.
Right.
So this is something I can follow with money flows that if I make an investment to buy a bond for somebody and the bond prices are going down, well, that's not good. So
Mm,
these are things that measurable things that I can do. And I didn't think the 10-year treasury would come down much, and it didn't because other nations don't want to keep as much money here. So these are things that I can use. And the super forecasting is a way for me to stay active and current every week. I have to sit down, look at these numbers, and I do make mistakes, obviously, but they're not like wild mistakes like other people because I'm constantly tracking it. So you have to forecast, you have to measure, and you revise and repeat. So it's a systematic play where most people just hear something on TV. I want to buy this. I want to buy quantum computing. I want to, and you just hear it, but they never go back and check it. So if someone says, "Can I see your scores?" I'll show them my 30-year treasury, the GDP growth rate in 2025, um, monthly non-payroll in 2025, 24, 23. Like that's what I'm doing. And so this is a way where if I sit in front of clients, I say, here's my forecasting scores. Here's what I did. And I'm like, and go look up what your bank said they did or what JP Morgan did. And sometimes they're stunned, like, how are you doing this? You're just some guy I know, because it's not about the degree on the wall. If you have a nicer pair of shoes than me, and I think everybody knows about the Ethiopians who I think that's it, I could be wrong, who outrun everybody in marathons and they didn't have nice shoes. It's just the
right.
discipline and the training. Everybody's heard about those stories. They're like, they're running around with the worst shoes because it's not about the shoes, it's not about the outfit, it's not about the degree on the wall, the pedigree, it's about the discipline. So really it's just spending the time to do it. A lot of more people could do it, but very few people want to do it so I allocate time for this. And
Mm,
that's essentially because these are things that directly impact my return and my client's return. It's how I've averaged about 5% higher return per year the last 4 years. That is, you know, roughly 23% more return. That's essentially 3 more years at 8% that I've gotten for clients. So if I
yeah,
was to
that's
get out of the
amazing.
market, so that could transform their lives.
Yeah.
So super forecasting is a way to compete against the best people and find out how good you are. And that's essentially what the goal is. And as long as you track it, you have the ability in these major areas. Defense spending is important because you may want to allocate money to defense spending. Will we attack another country? So I don't do all of them, but I do stuff like that, like dealing with El Salvador. I thought something would happen, which we did. We made a deal with them, and they own a lot of Bitcoin. So there's these little things, and by shifting them around, these are things that I can make money and make decisions, and then I can show clients, and I can also say, why was I wrong? What happened? And I can go back and continually refine it because most people, when they make predictions, you go on TV, you're bold, no one questions them. No one asks, what is your rate? What is your Briar score? How many of these are you right on? They just say, oh, I like the guy. He's on TV or she's on TV. They sound really, and that is a very dangerous item. In a world where
Yeah.
there's so much information, you're getting all these different opinions. But if I had a choice of quarterbacks, I'd want Tom Brady. I wouldn't want the guy at my local high school football team, which is where I was going with Jake Paul goes, well, I was all state in high school, thinking like he was the best professional ever, and you were really good in high school. Like people have such extraordinary overconfidence that
Yeah.
it doesn't match their skill level. And so this is a way to test your skill. And you have to essentially actually compete. So that's really what super forecasting is. It's a way to just test your metal, so to speak, and stay sharp.
So, what does it mean to update your beliefs? And why is that so hard for most people?
So on here, you basically come from two schools. You have egalitarians. A lot of us are born and we question things. We have curiosity. When you're curious, no one ever said, boy, I wish they didn't have that much curiosity, or at least we don't say that. But other people don't really have curiosity, so they take their cues from everybody around them, and that's the social circles. The problem with the social circles is that causes people to buy bigger houses than they want, fancier cars than they want, spend more money than they want, do things outside of what really matters to them because you're constantly getting pulled. When you're a growth mindset or you're open-minded, you actually start to continually refine what's important to you, what matters to you. And then you go back and you say, okay, what am I doing? Am I spending money well? Am I saving money well? Am I taking the vacations? Am I spending? So that's really the difference is it's about reevaluating your life and your goals. And where is real wealth? It's your health, it's your relationships.
Hmm.
Because we're all going to die. The question is, did we really live to our potential? And again, we would like financial independence, but even if you get to 66 or 67, which is a common term, are you healthy? Did you take good care of yourself? Or are you going to be sick for 20 years in that or in just on medicine? So rethinking your values and rethinking, hey, all my friends are watching football every single weekend. Is that really the way I want to live it? Or do I want to spend it hiking or, taking some adventures? Like, what is it going to really, and going outside of your comfort zone? And that kind of goes into super forecasting, that goes into investing. I'm constantly looking at different things outside of what I know because I want to build those blocks of growth. Even though it may be smaller steps of growth, it's still growth. And that's kind of what we all should be, so to speak, climbing up the mountain for. Because once you stop climbing the mountain and you think you've won, you've lost because you're no longer trying to improve.
Yeah, 100%. So, what about this? How do elite forecasters break down complex global problems?
All right. So this is one of the things that we have a really hard time doing. Now, I was born very different. So, but I had to learn this. Most people just look at their local situation.
Right.
But when you travel overseas and you go other places, you start to realize Americans are very different from the rest of the world. We're very independent, we're very vocal. Where other places in Japan, they're completely different culture. Whereas if you're in another place, bowing should never happen. Like a Japanese person meets someone who's Muslim, the bowing is completely different than someone there who shakes hands differently, or women only bow to men. Like all these things are different. So you have to take an outside view of our look and then other people's outlook. So you take an outside view, an aerial view of everything. And it's very hard to do because we're mentally set up to make an instant judgment, which is called System One, which is one of the greatest books that changed my life was called Think Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. But the
Yeah.
precursor to yeah to that was the Undoing Project because it told the story. And he basically said it like I think he's 9 or 10 years old. I think it was about 9 or 10. He goes, that's when I realized like I was so different. They just told me to be quiet because I would ask questions. And when I read that passage, I literally stopped in my spot and go, I get it. So you have to be an observer of human behavior, but be aware of your own behavior, which can be hard because you want to normalize how you think is normal and everybody else is not normal. So that's how you do like what would a person who as an example, how is that person going to react? And then looking at their behaviors and breaking down. So there's a lot more to it than just what we think. So once you kind of narrow it down, then you take an inside view, a more closer look, because most of us just look close to see a problem, but it's like crossing the street. It may look clear, but you really got to look really wide and far. And that's the mistake most people make is they're looking just really short term and not that all these things could happen. And
Yeah.
like to give you an example, just one simple example. We had a government shutdown recently. Now, I was thinking 50-50 on it, but then we had that shooting where they shot someone in the back. That was a triggering one event. One trigger caused the government shutdown because now all of a sudden it caught all the. So that is inside, but looking outside, you were prepared that it could happen because when you have all these different people and all these, so that's the inside view triggered it, but the outside view you had you prepared for it because you could see something was boiling all over the country. You just didn't know if it was going to be Minnesota, Portland, or Chicago, if that makes sense.
Right. What about the emotional attachment? How do you avoid becoming emotionally attached to your prediction?
Well, you have to think of them as just math scores.
Yeah,
They're math. Now, for me, it's not about me. It's not about if you're the forecaster, because anybody who's competing in these, they're probably very similar to me. It's convincing people that don't think this way how it's different because they heard somebody that they like. And if you like somebody, you're automatically going to believe that whatever you hear from them is good.
right.
And even if they tell you 10 wrong things, if you like them, you'll still choose them over somebody who is right 10 times in a row because you dislike them. You can learn whether you like or dislike somebody. You can learn from anybody, even what not to do and what not to become. But about half of our population, just across the globe, just the way it's worked, whether you go to Korea, South Korea, regardless, you have people roughly a 50-50 split between horizontal horizontal and vertical thinking. So you have to be different in how you deliver that. You have to walk them through that process. Because I had people go, "Well, I can't believe this. I thought he was joking." I'm like, "Well, he said it 150 times every single day." And
Right.
for somebody that doesn't have any vested interest in it, when you look overseas at how they view our country and our leaders right now, you have 7.7 billion people that hate us. But yet in this country, the people only think internally inside of it are like, no, everybody loves him. You're wrong. I'm thinking like there's 100, whatever it is, 70 million people that like this person. But when you go outside, you see all of these people hate us and the money and all the, so, but these people are not willing to look outside of their own social circle because their identity is tied to it. So, when someone I'll give you an example. When someone works at the government, I know people that voted for this particular person. I said, he's going to try to cut your job. They're like, no, 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 no. And now it happened. They're like, but he didn't mean me. So they're always chopping down. And then when it was them, they're like, I can't believe it. It really takes them a long time to get through that. So with forecasting, you're not going to convince them. They're not going to be somebody that learns until it affects them personally. So that's it. You're going to have to just realize that a lot of people aren't wired to update their beliefs until it personally affects them, where a lot of us will continually update our beliefs. So I think it's better to garden with people that want to pull the weeds out. But in case someone does want to help garden and change, then bring them into your garden, so to speak, and fertilize them because we want more people with us, but we can't force them to change. And so when you're looking outside, you need to understand that you're not going to change their beliefs. There's an example of deep canvassing and how people can even be swayed for 2 months just on marketing. Deep canvassing is where you go in and you ask questions and then you relate a personal story to them. Like, have you ever been discriminated against? Oh, yeah, I've been discriminated. So you are against discriminatory policies. And they're like, yes. And now, for the first time, instead of saying, I'm being discriminated against. Now they're understanding other people's perspectives and how they were. So you have to make it really personal about people. But so super forecasting and updating beliefs typically don't work on a lot, about half the population until it affects them. And that's just globally.
Yeah. I guess the people who are not easily influenced are the strongest. I feel like humans are so easily influenced. There's few and far between who aren't really easily influenced.
Obviously, it depends on your social circles because we're all guilty of that. If I, you know, I want to get a roofer and I don't know who to trust, so I have to just ask people. And so I'm
Yeah,
easily influenced on that because I don't know anything about roofing. And the last two
totally.
roofers I had, I got leaks in my roof. So again, you can't do everything. So that's why it can be, and maybe the contractors, maybe they're out to get a lot of us homeowners, or there's just so few of them now. But regardless, when you get a good contractor, keep them if you can.
Right.
Um, but the point I make, it's you can only spend so much cognitive energy on certain things. So I think
Yeah.
when you find people that really know a field well, which I finally did, I'm like, oh my Lord. Then you have to have that trust and you have to trust people. But a lot of people just have that insecurity of trusting others.
Yeah. Yeah. A hundred
And
percent.
and then others don't trust somebody who will take them right off a cliff. So I guess you have to read that person, so to speak, so that you have an understanding. And I'm guilty of that because there's things I want to get done in my house, like every homeowner. And, I struggle with that. And because that's not an area I'm good at and stuff like that. So I think it really depends on our areas and understanding how little we know and how insignificant our opinions really are. And then being open to writing them down. And so this is what leads me. Write down your thoughts. Don't speak your thoughts. Listen to everybody. This is what I do. I write them down every single day, and then I go back and I read them. So I keep them in my notes in the Apple. I used to keep them in my to-dos in Microsoft, but I crashed it because I put so much stuff in there over 7 years that my Microsoft to-do no longer works. So it just stores stuff there. I literally crashed on Microsoft with my notes. So I switched back to Evernote. So by storing them, you can go back and reread your thoughts. And that is a great way to update and not have anybody else attack you. So if you don't want, now for me, I'm very open. I'll tell you when I'm wrong. But if you don't want to share that, keep your notes and you can go back and you can update your beliefs without anybody knowing. And that's a good way to protect your ego and your identity, so to speak. So that to me is a safer way. A lot of women do that. They journal, they write in journals. And it's not even
Yeah.
about that. It's personal. So write and then keep that. And you can say, oh, 3 months ago, I said I was going to do this. I didn't do it. What am I going to be able to do this week to catch up? So then you start having these little notes like, I'm going to do this on Monday. And then you're holding yourself accountable. Those little things matter. And you'll start to
Yeah.
achieve anything in life you want, whether it's yoga, breath, surfing, and just said, I'm just going to do 10 minutes today. I'm just going to do 15. Do little tiny steps, or I'm going to read 25 pages every day, and I'm going to journal 1 page. Keep it really, and that's where you start to make these improvements, micro improvements, which can be dramatic in your thought process because you have a platform for looking back on what you said. But most people don't. They say something, and then 3 months later they say the opposite, and they're like a weather vane. They don't know which direction they're going. And that who wants to live a life like that? For me, that's why I forecast. That's why I write. That's why I do these types of things. And when I make a mistake on a stock, I tell everybody I was wrong on United Healthcare. I didn't think this would happen, and I sell it. Most people typically hold it because they'll say it's going to come back or I'll buy more. I'm like, if it doesn't come back, they're like, well, I didn't lose money. I'm like, but you've held it 20 years and haven't made any money. That's what people typically do because their ego is tied to it. And I'm like, it's just the stock. It's not going to tuck you into bed at night. It's not going to love you and hold you at night. It's not going to,
Yeah.
it's not going to. So I think that's just letting your ego go is really hard for a lot of people. It's really hard for most people. But for me, I just say I was wrong.
Right. So what about in super forecasting and stock selection? How does super forecasting improve your stock selection?
Well, with following the money and following euros and stuff, it allows me to look at things. I this is my personal belief. I'm not recommending it. I believe because I'm seeing outflows of the US dollar that more money will flow into Mexico. And if you have a plant in Mexico, a Kia plant, a Panasonic plant, and they're stable, and I'm seeing money come in, then I'm going to forecast that Mexico's economy will rise even faster. Because if you have a plant there already, you can increase production by 20 or 30%. And so that I put more money in Mexico. I'm going to put money this week into Peru. I'm going to put more money into specific defense contractors in Europe because so that's the type of stuff where you can be right 55% of the time and make tremendous amounts of money. And that's ultimately what I think is going to happen. And I will keep my bond, my longer term bond shorter because I don't think rates are the long-term rates tied to housing are going to come down because that requires the US to close its deficit and the deficit's increasing. And one of my bets is that we'll spend over $6.25 trillion over a certain period. And that's what I'm forecasting, way above it. And most people are like at 75, and I'm like at 99% because there's the tax revenues down. So these are things that you can pay attention to look at the value of the dollar, the price of gold, and these are the things that I'm going to use to my benefit. But I'm doing it with less risk. And so that when certain events occur, when we have a bear market or other events, I'll have all this cash to be able to go and invest without falling behind the market or even outperforming the market by dramatic amounts. So that's what I use it for. I use it for all of these things going on that are interconnected. If Europe has a debt problem, it will affect us. But if the US has a debt problem, other places are getting less dependent on the US. And that tells me that, we need to be over in this area and less here. Most of us have this home bias where we look at just the US. But if things are changing, and it does appear that way, then you're going to want to have things in the right area. Most advisors will have you buying Russian assets blindly when you buy an international fund. I don't know about you, but I don't think it's a good market to be in. But most advisors don't even know you're buying Russia because they just buy the international. I don't do that. So these are like the little things that when you're forecasting and competing, you're staying on top of this. You're with your groups and you're competing, and you have the ability to really stay at the forefront of where things are and not reacting after it happens. My goal is to, again, there might be a big wave that comes that it's unexpected and it happens. You'll be surfing 6 or 8 foot waves and a 12 one will come in. It happens. But that,
Right.
but you're prepared for it. And that's essentially what you want to do with this. And that's really what I think with this transformation going on now globally, when we're attacking Greenland, when we're saying we're going to shut down a bridge that Canada built, when we're threatening to take over Canada and send our troops into Mexico, like these are not normal behaviors. These are fracturing relationships. So more than any other time in my entire life, we're destroying long-term relationships. It's like if you're a neighbor, if we're neighbors and I'm lighting your lawn on fire and let my dog poop on your lawn, and I was like, but you better come over and buy the crafts my wife sells. You're like, I ain't coming here. I ain't doing business with you. Like those are fracturing wildly. So I think that's where people who really believe we're okay are going to be left in a bad position because they have too much risk and then the rest of the world is going to decouple a little bit from us, and they're going to wind up costing themselves several years of returns, and ultimately that could affect their retirement. So, that's my big concern is the pain that most Americans are going to feel because when the bailouts happen, we bailed out the airlines during COVID, we bailed out the banks in 2008, but there's no bailout for the taxpayer, the people funding the bills. So
Yeah.
that's why I'm doing this because I want the people that hear this to pay attention, to get the help they need. That's what I'm talking about. A lot of people in 2000 couldn't retire until 2012 because the market didn't recover for 12 years. 12 years.
Wow.
12 years. That's a long time.
That's a long time. Decade is a long time.
So that's why I'm kind of doing this and really pushing that I want to help people. I have a limited amount and I will train other people to do stuff that I do. But these are transformative times. And maybe if this wouldn't be necessary in normal times, but I don't think we're in normal times, and I don't think we'll be in normal times for probably the next 5 years. And who's got 5 years to give away of their life? No one. No one does.
Mhm. So tell everyone more of what you do.
All right. So I'm a certified financial planner. I do financial advice. I call myself a behavioral wealth architect because I design, I build, and then implement and constantly refine, reassess, and reevaluate people's financials, taxes. I map it all out and I take a very hands-on approach. I basically have a third of what most advisors have because I do a lot of this additional work because I love it. And if you want an opportunity to really have things evaluated, reach out to me. I'm doing these because I really want people, regardless if you work with me or not, which I would like you to if we're on the same value system, to really rethink what you're doing. We spend too much time watching sports, looking for cars, shopping for furniture, but not enough time reevaluating our personal situation if things go a little off kilter. And I think it's important, especially if you're 50 and over. These are our red zone years. It's very important. And that's why I'm really stressing this. I'm 53. I know it, and I want to help people because I know how many people are behind the eight ball, skyrocketing college price, college for our kids, all these other things that came out for the Generation X that our baby boomers didn't have to fool with. So many kids can't afford houses. We have to really reevaluate this. And that's what I'm doing this for. I really want to help people. I really care.
Yeah, amazing. Thank you so much for being here today, Will. Do you have any last minute thoughts you want to leave everyone with?
No. A year from today, you wish you would have done it today. Remember that. Because 5 years from today, you'd be thankful you did it today because your life will be so much better.
Yeah, amen to that. Thank you so much for being here, Will.
Thank you.
And to our audience, so super forecasting isn't about predicting the future perfectly. It's about thinking clearly when others react emotionally. So if you'd like to learn more about Will's work or his book, we will include everything in the show notes and make it easy for you to access him. Listen to what he said. Have a sit down and think about your future. Do you know what's going to happen? Maybe certainty would provide you with some security. Until next time, take care, everyone.